For most of the years I've been here in the Senate, every place I've gone, there's been the same member of the press standing with his little notebook, his recorder, waiting for me to make a mistake. And he's been able to pick a few of them up. I know this is not the time to be laudatory about anybody about anything, but I want to take just a minute, and we should all recognize David Espel, who's going to be leaving. He's one of the best of the best. David?
Okay. His original name was Espovich.
That was real nice, Chuck. Thanks.
He likes it. He's proud of his Serbian heritage.
We've been calling for a long-term, multi-year highway bill for months. We're glad that Senator McConnell has made a decision that we should have a highway bill. Well, we would be happy to vote on a highway bill. We have a few very minimal rules that we follow. One is that we should actually be able to see the bill and read it and discuss it before we're asked to vote on it. So it's very highly unusual that now we're being told that at first it was going to be at 2:15, now it's going to be at 4:15 or thereabouts, and we're going to have a vote on a bill we haven't seen. That's not a good way to legislate. And then we're being told that there will be no amendments on it, and that maybe sometime we'll be able to have take a look at it. So it's really very, very unusual that my friend, the Republican leader, is asking us to do something that is somewhat untoward, and that's an understatement. So we're not going to vote on a bill we haven't seen. We'll vote on it, but not favorably. I've asked the Republican leader to put this over until we can look at the bill. I want a highway bill. I've had the good fortune of being chair of that committee on 2 separate occasions. I've worked on long-term highway bills under Chafee, under Moynihan, under Baucus, and it was a wonderful legislative program, and that's where you really learn to legislate, with those long-term highway bills. But to be told on this bill that we're going to take it or leave it, whatever we're given, is not going to work. We can't. That's not fair. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to the American people. So I ask again here publicly the Republican leader to join us to postpone this vote until we have a text of something to read, to give all senators a reasonable amount of time to read and consider this legislation. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have my caucus have an opportunity to talk to each other in a private session to determine what we should do on this bill. There's more committees involved in this than you can imagine. We've got the Environment and Public Works Committee, of course. We have Finance Committee, of course. We got the Commerce Committee. We have the Banking Committee. We have a long range, and it wouldn't hurt if we gave a nod to the White House what's being done on this. So I say to my friend, the Republican leader again, just slow down. You can imagine what would have happened 6 or 8 months ago if I had asked McConnell, would you mind our moving to a bill that we haven't read yet? And then when this bill you haven't read yet, when you get on it, there'll be no amendments? I don't think you would have agreed to that, and I think we would be very foolish to agree ourselves. Senator Durbin?
In 10 days, the 33rd short-term extension of the Highway Trust Fund expires. And for the last 7 or 8 weeks, we've gone to the floor of the Senate insisting that we not continue this foolish approach to funding the infrastructure of America. We have called for a long-term bill, which historically we've had when it comes to the Highway Trust Fund, and we've called for it to be paid for in a responsible way. Last week, Senator McConnell came forward with a proposal, and as a result of that proposal, a negotiation started. I want to salute our colleague, Senator Boxer, and her efforts in trying to reach an agreement with Senator McConnell. I cannot imagine the assignment that she accepted, to have the first really long-term bill in 10 years on the Highway Trust Fund, to try to resolve the differences of 4 different Senate committees on this bill, to come up with something that meets the general satisfaction of 45 of her Democratic colleagues, to work from a minority position. I know what she's poured into this, her heart and soul. She was on the telephone all weekend to many of us over and over again, trying to work out the details. I don't know if we're close or not. As Senator Reid has said, we want to see this bill in writing. I've heard representations made as to what is in the bill. Some are encouraging, some are not. It wasn't that long ago we were tied up on the floor of the United States Senate over one provision in the human trafficking bill that tied us up for a month. So it's important that we know what's in the bill. I will tell you this, there is a strong appetite across America for a highway trust fund extension bill that is long enough in duration to do this country proud. I reached out to some of the leaders in industry in my state over the weekend. Caterpillar Tractor Company is an example. They've seen their sales flat because there's no prospect of highway construction in the near future. I know when I approach those who work on these highways how many people are waiting and waiting, unemployed, because of our inability to act. What we've brought forward today is a proposal that we be given this legislation in writing, a sufficient time to look at it carefully, make a good faith judgment as to whether we go forward, and I hope Senator McConnell will give us the time to do that. It's a reasonable request whether you're in the minority or the majority.
Thank you. Well, for the last several months, Senate Democrats have been very clear about our goal for a transportation bill. We told our Republican colleagues we wanted the bill to be bipartisan, long-term, and that we needed an increase in funding that will help make serious progress towards meeting our country's desperate infrastructure needs. Our roads and bridges are literally falling apart. The current level of funding just doesn't get the job done. Democrats proposed one way of paying for the long-term bill that meets our infrastructure needs, but we welcomed other ideas. Since we made our call for action, Republicans have seemed to move in the right direction. But we're going to take a careful look at what they propose and see if it meets our country's needs. There isn't any one road to Rome. And if there are other ideas on how to get this done different than the one our caucus had looked at, which was international tax reform, we want to take a look. We'll entertain it seriously. But we need time to actually read the proposal. We're asking for time and space for our Republican colleagues to do that. Now, Mitch McConnell back in January said he wanted a return to regular order. And here we are. They want us to vote in 2 hours at a bill we haven't seen, we haven't read, they haven't made public, and then they say there are no amendments on the bill. We come to that? That's regular order? I can't remember a time where I have been asked in all my years in the Congress to vote yes ahead of time on a bill that we haven't seen and then have no amendments. What if we like 80% of the bill, but there's one provision in that bill that seems to be a really bad one? Won't we have a chance to amend it? We're not trying to be dilatory here. We're the ones who pushed them for a long-term bill. So, bottom line is this. We want a proposal that leads to a long-term transportation bill that increases funding, that doesn't rob Peter to pay Paul with unacceptable pay-fors. We need time to look over alternative ideas before we move forward. Our Republican colleagues for years have asked for more time to review bills. We think they ought to extend the same courtesy to us, rather than asking us to vote on a proposal on which the ink isn't even dry and at this point is still invisible.
Senator Murray.
Well, Democrats have made it very clear that we want a long-term reauthorization bill to give states and communities the certainty that they need to create jobs and invest in our transportation infrastructure. We have been actually saying this for years, and we've been calling on Republicans to join us at the table to get this done. Families across the country didn't need Republicans to push us close to another unnecessary crisis, days away from an expiration, and countdown clocks ticking down. What our families do need is certainty. They need economic growth. They need transportation investment and middle-class jobs. So we're very glad that Republicans are finally working with us to get this done. The details of this bill are just coming together. We're just having a chance to even hear about them and have not yet seen them. And this is an issue that we should not rush into without seeing what we are voting on. Because we do need to get this done, and we want to make sure it gets done right. And we want to make sure it works for middle-class families and our country.
Take some questions.
Senator Reid, so if McConnell goes forward with this vote, or will Democrats vote it down?
Well, I know I'm going to vote no, and I would think that most Democrats want to read something first. We had a caucus that talked about this in some detail, and I would be surprised if we're going to vote yes on a bill we haven't seen.
Senator Reid, on a different topic, Senator Lindsey Graham just had his phone number read out by Donald Trump in public.
Had his phone number read?
His cell phone number, Donald Trump read it out loud. I'm wondering what you think of behavior like that, whether it's befitting of a presidential candidate, whether you think he should be in the race still.
Who, Lindsay?
No.
I made some remarks this morning where I talked about Donald Trump. First of all, said that Republican, there's 16 of them now running for president, they're stomping all over themselves, running to jump on Trump for criticizing John McCain. I agree with him for doing that. But in the process, because I think if there were ever an American hero, somebody that spent almost 6 years in a prison camp, half of it in solitary confinement, and a good part of that solitary confinement being tortured, his broken shoulder being rebroken, and on with all the torture that he had to go through. So John McCain is truly a hero, a war hero. So the Republican running for president are jumping all over themselves, trying to say that's such a bad thing for him to do. Why don't they talk about some of the other things that Donald Trump does that aren't so good? Immigration. All the other things that he does that are so low life. And so I would tell my Republican colleagues, I'm sorry that somebody has his cell phone number, but Trump has done a lot more than outing his cell phone number. He's done some really bad things that the Republicans are afraid to criticize. Why? Because Donald Trump is in the mainstream of most Republicans, what they're doing and talking about. That's why he's leading the polls by double digits.
Your thoughts on the Planned Parenthood video, which is the second one that just came out?
Yes, I want to read a couple things on this because I want to be fairly precise in what I say because it's an important issue. Human fetal tissue research has been critically important for biomedical research for a long, long time. It's even been used to help the polio vaccine. In fact, a Nobel Prize was awarded because of this. These politically motivated videos raise some questions, but nothing I've seen indicates Planned Parenthood violated federal laws. These edited videos should not take away from the important work Planned Parenthood does on behalf of women. All organizations need to be abiding by the law, and if they don't, then it should be looked into, and that's what's happening right now.
The Democrats have talked about a long-term highway bill for a long time, but this is a 6-year authorization with only 3 years of funding. Is that enough? Is that what you call a long-term bill? I would
love to have a 6-year bill. That was the standard since Eisenhower started until the Republicans showed up a few years ago. I think a 6-year bill would be the right thing to do. I would accept a 3-year bill because it's, as Senator Durbin has laid out, it's much better than the 33 other short-term extensions we've had. But I hope that when we get this text and we read it, and it's something that we can move forward on, I hope we can do that. But we'll have to wait and see.
Senator Reid and also
I was waiting for you. Okay?
for both Senator Reid and Senator Schumer, have you had a chance to review the Iran agreement, and do you have any comments that you'd like to make?
Yes, I have read it. I have not studied it, but I have read it. We're having a closed briefing tomorrow. I think it's at 4:30. We have Secretaries Moniz, Kerry, and Lou will be there. I'm anxiously awaiting them because I do have some questions I'm going to ask them. But I think everyone should keep their powder dry until that closed briefing is over with and until there's a better understanding of the legislation.
Senator Berkeley Thursday is introducing legislation that would ban anti-discrimination in all parts of civil rights law. Will you be a real sponsor of that bill?
Sherrod wanted to talk about that in the caucus day. We ran out of time. He's going to do that on Tuesday. Senator Merkley, yes. What did I say? Sherrod. Oh, okay. Sherrod did talk a lot in the caucus today. So Senator Merkley is going to report on that next Tuesday, and I'm going to have him do a report on that. It sounds like something I would agree to, but I need to know more about the legislation. Thanks, everybody.